He waived. Okay, that's good. I would have to wait. We're all set. All right. We're going to call to order our first hearing of the evening. This is the application of Peter and Melissa D'Amato. The application is dated October 24th, 2017, and the D'Amatos are seeking a variance from the terms of Section 6B4 of the bylaw. They're proposing to build a 12-foot by 14-foot storage shed 25 feet from the front property line of this single-family home, which is located at 3 Carisbrook Road in Milton. The bylaw requires that accessory structures be set back a distance of 40 feet from the front property line. This property is in the Residence B district. Just summarize the advertisement. We'll have as evidence at the hearing of the application, which is dated October 24th, 2017. We have a denial letter from our building commissioner, Joseph Prondak. It's dated October 24th, 2017, and we have an addendum to the application from Attorney Edward Corcoran of Quincy, Massachusetts, is representing the applicants. And Mr. Corcoran encloses some schematics of the property and the proposed shed. An order of conditions issued by the Conservation Commission describes the requested relief, the reasoning of why, in his opinion, the relief should be granted. So we'll have all of these documents as evidence at the hearing. We did receive a letter from an interested neighbor, Robert Schiller of 6 Carisbrook Road, writes to us on November 26, 2017. He lives at 6 Carisbrook Road across the cul-de-sac from Melissa and Travis D'Amato. His wife, Allison, and he met the D'Amatos recently to review their plans to add a shelter to their side yard. We have no issues at all with the plan, and we hope you will grant the variance application. Best regards, Robert J. Schiller. So we thank Mr. Schiller for his letter. Mr. Corcoran, welcome to back to the Board of Appeals. It's good to see you. And we're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ned Corcoran here on behalf of Melissa D'Amato and her husband Travis, who are the owners of the property at 3 Carisbrook Drive in Milton. This is a small neighborhood that is out near the Houghton's Pond section of town. It is a small cul-de-sac.
We had some dealings with some of those houses when there was a proposed telecommunications pole that was going to be annoying the neighborhood.
Got it. And I have, for the board's edification, and a Maps Online site taken from the town's website that shows the property in relation to the other properties on the cul-de-sac.
Thank you very much.
I have one other letter of support that has come from the abutters at 4 Carisbrook. That's Shirley Wu and King Yao. It says essentially the same thing. I'll hand that to the clerk as well. As I indicate in the, and as you indicated in the preface, the D'Amatos own the property at 3 Carisbrook Drive. The property as it bounds to the right-hand side is owned by the MDC. It's part of the Blue Hills Reservation. It's substantially wetland and is subject to conservation protection. This is sort of a two-step process for the D'Amatos to do, not only to approve the shed, but also some other improvements to the rear of their dwelling that are attached to the dwelling and not subject to the relief being requested here, is that the work is all being done within the setback of the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. It's all within 100 feet of the wetland, and so all of the work is being designed to either mitigate or minimize the impact to wetland. And in this case, the location of the shed, which is shown on the right-hand side of the property, sort of in this, right as you approach this hockey stick portion, is designed to be located reasonably far back off the street at 20 feet, but avoiding the zone of no disturbance, if you would, from the conservation's perspective. And so this plan was reviewed and approved by the Conservation Commission. They issued an order of conditions accepting the location of this shed as it is, as being outside of the jurisdictional area, And so the issue of that jurisdictional area is really what creates the issue here, is that they can't put the shed setback 45 feet because it then encroaches within the wetland buffer area in an area that would be subject to Conservation Commission jurisdiction. In addition to the two letters that you've received, the D'Amatos have also spoken to the other neighbors at 1, 2, and 5 Carisbrook Drive. They did not submit letters, but they did indicate their support. They are not here to be either supportive or objection, but I understand that they specifically have met with the D'Amatos and that they've spoken favorably to them in support of this. So given that, given the support of the direction of the Conservation Commission, I would ask that the board consider granting the relief in the form of a variance from the front yard setback in this case, and I'd open it to the questions of the board and any concerns that the board may have.
Ms. O'Donnell, do you have any questions?
Well, actually, you answered the question, because I was wondering, the direct abutter at number 1 is the one I'm most concerned about, the fact that other people across the street don't have a problem with. He's the one that's going to have it right next to his property line.
So we have had many conversations with Matt, and he does not mind at all. So he's open to the idea, but unfortunately, he was unable to write a letter. So.
Well, the good news, he didn't write a letter against it, so.
Mr. Ray?
No, I don't think I have any questions.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment. Whenever I see Reed's Ferry Sheds, I see their ads on TV. They apparently build great sheds.
Excellent.
The last time we had any dealings with Reed's Ferry Sheds, a gentleman in Milton purchased one of these sheds, and the Reed's Ferry folk came by, built the shed where they wanted it, all without permits and without checking the zoning bylaw, and the whole thing was bizarre, and they apparently wouldn't come into the jurisdiction and testified before the board when the applicants were seeking relief, because they didn't want to destroy their $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 shed, whatever it was. So I'm glad to see the Reed's Ferry folk are maybe cooperating in the zoning process these days.
Given the proximity to the wetland, I suppose that their ad campaign, which this is not fall a particle board, will hold true and it will not disintegrate as a result of any excess association with wetland.
And let me just ask you, is this a reasonable replica of the type of shed you're going to build?
Yes, we would like to get the cedar shake style, which is exactly what our house is in. So it would just be
Okay,
smaller.
so at least we'll know what you're going to build, and you won't
Right.
show up seeing a shed with an upstairs
Oh, no.
loft to it or something. Okay. Great. With that, I have no further questions. Let's see if there's anybody here who has questions of the applicant, or anybody who wishes to speak in support of the application. How about anybody who wants to speak in opposition to the application? Thundering silence. So unless you have anything more to add, Mr. Corcoran, we're going to close this hearing, and we'll just...
Nothing further, thank you.
Thank you. We'll discuss the merits of this application in open session as we're required to do so, and vote on the application. So, Ms. O'Donnell, do you want to be heard first?
I suppose I could. I mean, considering the findings that we have to make for the issuance of a variance, I think they've established by virtue of the fact that they have an order of conditions which prohibits them putting the shed anywhere else, that they could make the argument that the topography and the landscape is such that the soil conditions would be required.
Yep.
And I don't think it derogates from the zoning bylaw to allow it. It's kind of my thoughts on the subject.
Okay. Mr. Gray?
I would agree with everything Ms. O'Donnell said.
Okay, well, I think Ms. O'Donnell's analysis is the right one. I think Mr. Corcoran has made a wonderful presentation and submitted some wonderful materials that have made our decision a little bit easier. It looks like a wonderful shed, and it's a beautiful neighborhood. I know the neighborhood, and you're doing your best to make it as unobtrusive as possible, and at the same time to respect the order of conditions, which is outstanding, and I think this application has merit. What we'll do is first of all, let's take it to a vote. All those in favor of granting the relief with the usual conditions that the shed will be put in the position as shown on the plan, and that that's a reasonable prototype of the shed that you intend to build?
Yes.
Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, Mr. Corcoran, another great victory for you.
Hard earned, thank you.
Congratulations on
Thank you
your
very much.
variance. I guess I should just ask you one question.
Sure.
Do they build sheds in the wintertime, or do you wait for the
It will
spring?
probably be a springtime endeavor.
All right, so there's no real emergency to crank this one out we'll do this in about 2 weeks, probably. And then there's a 30-day appeal period, even though nobody has spoken in opposition to your application. But once that passes, you're free to build anytime you want, but we didn't want to hold you up if you had somebody in the street ready to go. Okay, congratulations.
Great, thanks.
Okay. Happy to do it.
Take a minute to run down and refill my water.
That doesn't usually happen. Already getting early.
Well, it's helpful. I'm happy to introduce myself
Well, wait till
before we get to the substance of the matter.
wait till Mr. Corcoran comes back, and
Okay.
then it will conform to the TV schedule.
Oh, sure.
He won't be usurping the director of the TV shows.
Or do they mark the time scheduled?
Yes, yes, and we're supposed to
On a
meet.
schedule.
We can be late, but we shouldn't be early.
Somebody might have an alarm
Sort of like
set for
tea in
this
that
particular.
Where would I watch this on TV?
You just go to the town website and go to,
Webcast through there.
what is it, Milton Access TV, and you'll probably be there tomorrow morning if you want to check out Mr. Corcoran's performance and how well you do.
Where's the camera?
You know, if you're having trouble sleeping on
On any given night.
any given night, you turn on Channel 8 and watch me put the town to sleep.
You know, some people,
I go to town meeting for that usually.
okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to call to order our second hearing of the evening. This is the application of Andrew and Anjali?
Good
Hack.
enough.
Close enough. Good. The Hacks live at 1395 Brush Hill Road, Milton, Massachusetts, and they're seeking a variance from the terms of Section 1A2 of the Milton zoning bylaw. Apparently, this is to correct an error by a professional land surveyor. Mr. Corcoran will get into the details, but the predecessor owner of the property did apply for a subdivision plan, and the professional land surveyor included parts of the street in the required minimum lot area in contravention of the bylaw. And as a result of this, the planning board granted approval of the two lots, but I don't know whether this is before or after Mr. and Mrs. Hack purchased the property, but the lots apparently are deficient if you don't use the street. So Mr. Corcoran is seeking a variance to correct that professional error. Let me just briefly do some preambles, which I think I did not do in the first hearing. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With us this evening is Kathleen O'Donnell to my immediate left, and Nicholas Gray to my immediate right. We'll hear from the applicant. Anybody who has questions of the applicant, people who want to speak in support or in opposition to the application, we tape recording the proceedings this evening. So that would ask that anybody, before they speak up or testify, tell us your name and address so we'll have a clear record of the proceeding. As evidence, I've summarized the advertisement. We have Mr. Corcoran's application dated November 6, 2017. We have an addendum to the application discussing the requested relief and the reasoning why the relief should be granted. We have a denial letter from Mr. Prondak, our building commissioner. It's dated November 6, 2017. We have a plot plan of the land with one of the lots outlined in red, which we think Mr. Corcoran is going to explain the significance of that to us. So without further ado, Mr. Corcoran, nice to see you again. I'm sorry? Oh, there is. Yes, there is a letter. Let me cover the letter. It's somewhat long. I don't know that I'll read it fully, but it's from Peter Hicks of 1425 Brush Hill Road in Milton. He writes to the Board of Appeals that, well, it says the undersigned neighbors. Are there undersigned neighbors?
I have 3 other letters to submit on behalf of other neighbors.
Let me summarize this one, and we'll move on. The undersigned neighbors fully support the application for this variance. They understand there was an error when the lot was created, that this is a AA residence district. There'd be no harm in granting the property or neighboring properties any relief as a result of this particular error or any other errors that may have occurred when these lots were being laid out. The requested relief is for an insufficiency of 6,000 square feet, and Mr. Hicks believes that that's de minimis for an 80,000 square foot lot. He supports his neighbors and wishes the variance be granted to remedy the error. So with that having been said, Mr. Corcoran, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ned Corcoran here on behalf of Andrew and Anjali Hack. This is an interesting matter because it's a fairly recent A&R subdivision of a large lot off of Brush Hill Road in Residence A zone. I have, again, online, Maps Online overview of the properties in question, and a little bit of specific on the lot. The lot was, I've outlined in red on the draft of the plan that I submitted. This is a copy of the plan, the A&R plan, as it was recorded at the registry. I downloaded it from the registry. The lot in red is the lot that was purchased by the Hacks after the division of the lots was approved by the planning board and the lot was recorded. The part in yellow identifies the area that's within the boundary of the right-of-way of the private way that serves as the frontage for the lot. The lot was intended to have 80,000 square feet. It's got 80,044 square feet if you count the area in yellow. We don't have the direct calculation because we didn't specifically recalculate it ourselves, but we understand it to be about 6,000 square feet is the area in yellow, which, if it's subtracted from the required lot area, you create a lot that is substandard for AA purposes. It's a fairly de minimis a diminution when you look at the entirety of the land area. It's a substantially 2-acre lot. It's less than 10% of the total land area that it would be, that is an error. If you look at more specific, and the way that this came up, I know that Marion McKettrick is here, and that she is representing abutters to the property, but this is the lot in question. Avenue A is a private way that comes off of Brush Hill Road and serves as frontage for Peter Hicks. Portion of property that's owned by the Schellers that is also on Hemingway Drive, which is another private way below it. And then Arthur Murphy and his wife, who have recently purchased approximately 6 acres, half of which is in Milton, half of which is in Canton, and which doesn't have frontage. So it's a pre-existing non-conforming lot under today's zoning. There's consideration going on with the planning board about creating a subdivision road and improving the roadway, and it was in the context of some of that engineering work that the error in the calculations were discovered with respect to the Hack lot. The Hacks were innocent purchasers, had purchased the lot. Barbara Piper, who owned the lot, had paid to have the lot divided, had it approved, was an innocent seller, was not aware that there was a problem. As I say, the problem came up in the context of work going on with the Schellers with respect to potential division of their lot into other lots, and work going on with the planning board. The Hacks, to her credit, Mrs. McKettrick contacted the Hacks as soon as she knew there was a problem, has worked on a number of ways to try to address a solution, including whether or not other pieces of property could be combined and sold to the Hacks for the purpose of doing this. That creates other issues of economics associated with, and we just thought the easiest and best thing to do would be to apply for a variance in this case, understanding that we have innocent buyer, innocent seller, and the Hacks who have applied for a building permit cannot build a single-family dwelling on the home until it is determined to either be conforming or otherwise authorized through legal process. So really the hardship is an economic hardship associated with the cost to remedy a situation, and where does that remedy come from? Forcing Mrs. Piper to further cut her property, to sell additional land, to incur additional engineering fees and engineering costs associated with that would be difficult. It's also difficult for, the Hacks who have spent what they think is a reasonable amount of money, so a significant amount of money to purchase the lot, to now have to think about spending additional capital to purchase additional property to make this what they thought was a conforming lot, conforming. And so I have copies of letters submitted by the other abutters. The Hicks, the Schellers, and Piper have each submitted letters that are substantially identical to the letter that was submitted. The Schellers, the Pipers, and the Murphys submitted letters that are substantially identical to the letter submitted by Peter Hicks, which went directly to the board. The others were sent directly to me. And so with that, I would urge the board to consider the relief requested and leave it to the board for any questions or other concerns that it may have.
Mr. O'Donnell, do you have any questions of Mr. Crocker?
Yes. When did the Hacks purchase this lot?
It was May of 2.5 years ago.
May 15, 2015.
5 months after essentially after the lots were divided and the A&R plan was recorded.
And Ms. Piper still has the property next door that was the lot that was subdivided?
That's correct.
Okay.
And I think that she, at the time it was that she divided her lot, she believed that that lot that she was dividing was conforming to zoning.
Does anybody talk to the engineer?
There have been conversations, I think, with the engineer.
I should think so.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have no more questions at the moment.
Let me ask a silly question. Do you have title insurance on the property?
We do, yeah.
Does that in any way help you out here?
No, it doesn't address this
They
issue.
don't usually have survey coverage unless you provide a survey plan. I used to work for a title insurance.
That's correct.
So you tried that avenue
Yeah,
already?
we've looked at our title insurance policy. It doesn't provide us relief for this.
Right.
Okay. Then I'm not going to ask any more questions for fear of asking the wrong
No, it was
question.
not an unreasonable question. It's where,
No, that was a
it's
good
where we
question.
started, actually. With
My
the
question was a good
exercise.
question. I just have some
good
other
question.
questions I'd like to ask you, but I'm afraid I don't want to know what the answer is. So I'm going to hand the field over to
All
Mr.
right.
Gray.
I think I know the answer, but I'll ask it just so it's in the record. One of the reasons for the AA zoning is to have the 2-acre lot is for sewer. I mean, for septic systems. Is that an issue for this property?
No, this property actually has sewer connection that comes in on Avenue A to the property.
Okay, so the underlying sort of major purpose for the 2-acre requirement is mitigated by the fact that the sewer line is present. Right.
Yeah, we've not pursued the idea of a septic system here. We've designed on the assumption of sewer.
Yeah.
And there is sewer that
Comes down the driveway
There
quite
will be
substantially.
access to the sewer. Okay, that was my main question.
Mr. Corcoran, you probably know of some historical examples where the board has granted relief when the homeowner is innocent and they're the victim of mistakes of professionals.
I have not discovered those other similar cases. I know that in situations where in residence A, B, and C zones, if there is a certain amount of land area, you can divide to something less than 40,000 square feet. And in the residence A, if it's the last lot and it's at least 32,000 square feet with the proper amount of frontage, the AA zoning doesn't provide that, doesn't provide for that.
Yeah, we've had a couple of these types of issues. I'm not sure they're exactly the same as this, but usually you have older surveyor techniques, and yet when you start to take out the laser beams, you find the inconsistencies. And so we've granted relief.
I was before this board several years ago with a property at the corner of Bradley Road and Brush Hill Road, where, as originally divided using slide rule technology, the lot area was 40,042 square feet, and when they re-input for the computer, it came out to be 39,969 feet. So it flipped conformity to nonconformity by a minuscule amount. If they had known at the time, they could have shifted the lot line by 6 inches, and they would have solved that problem. So I know that there are examples of that around town where, like this, they cut to a minimum number to create a lot that was conforming, and then at some point later, either with new technology or otherwise, you discover an error was made, and it was, an innocent buyer relying on that, I think, ought not to be punished.
Let me see.
Just one more
Of
question.
course,
I
Mr.
just
Gray.
thought of something else.
Sure.
I should know the answer to this, but if this variance is allowed, for purposes of dimensional requirements, when the house gets built, what will be the operative line then for distance from the setback requirements?
The setback would be from the frontage requirement, would be the legal lot line, which is the
The center of the road,
Not the center of the road, it'd be from the,
where we move it, if we, yeah, okay, that's what I thought. All right, that's it.
and it's a big, I mean, it's, as I say, it's almost an 80,000 square foot lot. It's a big
Yeah.
lot.
So you're going to, you're going to have to do a new plan anyway, you have engineering costs, notwithstanding, I mean, if we granted a variance, you'd have to go back and do a new plan, anyway,
To cite the,
to create the legal,
to cite the proper, the house on the lot to demonstrate that it meets the front yard set and side yard setbacks, yes. But we wouldn't have to take a plan back to the planning board and then negotiate on whether we have to purchase additional land or seek those costs in another direction.
Okay. Let's see if there's anybody here who either has any questions or wants to otherwise participate in the hearing. Mrs. McGetrick, do you have anything to say, or?
Well, Mr. Corcoran has done a good job of summarizing what happened, and I was the attorney for the A&R application for this lot. The plan was supposed to be drawn with the proper amount of area, although for an A&R lot, the issue was frontage on the way, and that was the issue that the planning board paid their attention to. But, you know, these plans, A&R plans say zoning is not, you have to further explore zoning issues, you have to further explore wetlands issues. So when a buyer ends up in this situation, finds out he doesn't have enough area, or perhaps ended up in an area where he didn't have the proper area to build because of the wetlands, he would have to go back and do something different with his lot. The reason I believe that the best route to follow here is the variance, is that all you would do if you did go back and add to the lot, first of all, you would have to have an engineer draw a new lot plan, which will cost about $5,000. I mean, we have estimates of that. You have to buy the land. In this case, the best way to do it is to buy it from the Schellers, who are on the wetland side of this lot, because they don't lose a lot of valuable land if they were to sell a strip of land to the owner. But they would still ask for some payment for that. It might be that the payment would be quite similar to what the engineering costs would be. But the costs begin to mount up, in addition to which you'd have to go back to the planning board, get an A&R plan approved to create that parcel on the Scheller land. So it's a little bit complicated. By adding that wetland piece, you do nothing for this lot. You don't there's no more ability to build, there's no more ability to use the lot. You simply have an unusable strip of wetland that you've added on in order to comply, indeed, with the zoning requirement. So the argument here would be that in this case, it's a de minimis relief. If you allow this lot to exist as a less than 80,000 square foot lot, given the way we define lot area, that you can't include the area of the street, because the buildable area of the lot is not going to change even if you add a strip of land. The neighbors all supported the lot when it was created. We went through a long process of convincing neighbors. The street was found to be adequate frontage for the lot under the A&R standards. And at this point, the Hacks have done a lot of work. They've worked with they have an architect, they have a new engineer. They've really done a lot of work on this lot. They've gone through the whole wetlands process, so they may have some other steps, but and that has been difficult because there are a lot of wetlands on the lot. So they're ready to go ahead and build, but they can't. And at least in my opinion, the best and most efficient solution in this case, it would be for the Board of Appeals to consider granting a variance. And I'd certainly respectfully request that the board consider doing that.
Thank you, Mrs. McGetrick. Well put. We appreciate your double teaming us tonight with Mr. Corcoran. For the sake of the record, let me ask, is there anybody else out there who either has questions of the applicant or Mr. Corcoran, or who otherwise wishes to speak in support of this variance application, and there's nobody there? Is there anybody present who wishes to speak in opposition to this application for variance? And there's no such person present. So unless you have something more to add, Mr. Corcoran, we'll end the hearing and discuss the application in open session and vote on it. Mr. Gray, please.
Thank you. Given where the homeowner is in terms of the situation that was created by the mistake, I guess, by the engineer in calculating the lot size, given the various options that were laid out as means to fix this, I think that granting the variance is probably the least obtrusive way, the most efficient way to do it. Just in looking at the lot size, which Mr. Attorney Corcoran very handily colored in for us in yellow, the strip that's missing, it would appear to my eye to be within the meaning of de minimis. So in light of all the facts and circumstances, and especially considering that none of the neighbors are all in support, no one has been in opposition to it, I would tend to be in favor of granting a variance.
Okay, Ms. O'Donnell.
I'm troubled by the issuance of a variance because I don't think it satisfies the statutory test. I think the hardship has been created by Ms. Piper, who did the plan and did the subdivision. I would be going back to Ms. Piper and saying, you know, your engineer did this, and so you should be selling a strip to these folks to correct the error that you created. I don't think there's a hardship, and I don't think, you know, money and inconvenience, I don't think rise to the level of standard for the issuance of a variance, but that's kind of my conservative view of issuing variances, but I could be convinced otherwise.
My view of this is Mrs. McGettrick's view. I think she stated it rather clearly. We can certainly adopt that approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not illegal. But I guess the question is here, wherein is the greater good? We're trying to correct an error by the engineer that Mr. and Mrs. Hack have been suffering with for 3 years or whatever to try to build their house. And the more you try to get land swaps and that, it takes time, takes engineering expense. Who's going to pay for that? I know who should pay for it, but it's so I tend to think that while Ms. O'Donnell is technically correct, sometimes the end result accomplished under certain circumstances is preferable than applying strict logical rules of zoning relief. We have nobody who objects to this. Everyone assents to it. And my view of it is maybe it's a pragmatic view. I think we should put an end to this beast right here and now.
Well, I think the town of Milton does have a history of being more generous with issuances of variance.
Well, we are, particularly when nobody's really harmed. It's technical, it's de minimis. I think Mrs. McGettrick is right, and Mr. Corcoran's right. It is de minimis, and yes, we can force people to go back and do land swaps and have new deeds prepared and plans prepared, and then have to go back to the wetlands people, and it's going to be a never-ending, probably 6 to 9 months of expense and angst and misery. And I don't think, under the facts of this particular case, not dealing this as a big precedent, that pragmatism and doing the right thing, I think, should prevail over technical zoning issues. I don't think we're setting a bad precedent here. We're not going to have 50 people, but we may have a few more coming in looking for relief. But that's my view of it. So I would urge the board to exhibit compassion, if not technical compliance with the zoning law, and get this problem resolved here and now.
Yeah, I was going to pull out look at the statute again, but it seems to me that there is, I mean, the hardship is, isn't there an element in the relief grant of an element of financial harm? No.
I'm not sure.
There has been in some
There
court.
was some, but really, no. I did look at this
Yeah, okay.
before we came tonight.
Okay.
Because I was troubled by the fact
Sure.
that I couldn't, we've had lots of situations where there have been topographical issues, dimensional issues, all those kinds of things.
Okay.
And all I could see here, as a conveyancing attorney, was time and money.
Yeah.
And time and money don't count as grounds for a variance. But I'm sensitive to Mr. Leonard's point that, this is not a huge issue, nobody's objecting, there's the likelihood of an appeal is slim to none, I guess, but, but I just want to be on the record that
Sure.
I'm troubled by the fact that
Okay.
we're not meeting the requirements for the issuance of a variance, in my opinion.
Do you have anything you want to add to that, Ned?
I think, look at it, the AA zone is a more recent zone. It was created largely because of septic and sewer issues for larger lots that existed further out in the town. The rest of the town zoning was written after the town was built. And it almost doesn't apply to the town of Milton as it exists. And so this board's called on all the time to look at those issues. I understand the difference here, but I think that this board's exercise of discretion in the appropriate case is necessary and appropriate. I take very seriously, and I know that Marion does the same, we don't rely on decisions that you've made in other cases as precedent for why you should do it here. I think that's lazy lawyering. I think it does this board a disservice. I think it does the process a disservice. I think every case rises and falls on its merits. I think the merits here are sufficient for the board's exercise of discretion. If this were a situation where 3 neighbors were coming in and objecting, completely different story. But this is a situation where, everybody agrees it's the right thing to do. It's the least costly, least disruptive means of correcting a mistake that was created by the engineer, but it was compounded by another town board. I mean, the planning board should have seen that and corrected it before.
Show street on there.
It doesn't matter. They're very, the issue of, in their definitions, frontage, 80% of frontage at 75% of depth is creating issues with some of these old pork chop lots. And how can they be redivided if there's an agreement? So some of those issues are out there, and this is a similar one. And it was a mistake that was stamped by the planning board. And so as a result, you really do have innocent buyer, innocent seller. And yeah, you're right. If somebody could spend a lot of money to correct that, but that rises to the level of a financial hardship that in some cases have been recognized by the court as sufficient to establish hardship. So.
Okay, thank you. I think that's well put. So is there further discussion on this?
No.
Okay, so let's put it to a vote. All those in favor of granting the variance as requested by the applicants, please say aye.
Aye.
So congratulations on the variance, and good luck. Sorry for all of the
Thank you.
you've been through.
All understood.
Oh, we've learned a lot about zoning. We've learned a lot about wetlands. Definitely a much more well-educated consumer
Oh,
of.
there you go. Just what you were hoping for, I'm
Exactly
sure.
what I was hoping for. Thank you very much.
Can I now torch you to write this one, or do you want me to write it?
I can write it. I'll make something up.
We never do that.
Boy, busy night for you.
God almighty.
I could spell Wollaston after 50 years in town.
You all set, Mr. Corcoran?
I am all set, thank you.
Okay, we're going to call to order our third hearing of the evening. This is the application of Wollaston Golf Club. It's dated October 24th, 2017. And the club is seeking amendments of a special permit number 986, which includes some other sub-permits, proposing to do certain improvements at the club, which are fairly detailed, and I see Mr. Corcoran has all of his photographs and plans, so I'm not going to go into the details. I'll let Mr. Corcoran do that. This property lies in a residential A zoning district. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me tonight, to my immediate left is Board Member Kathleen O'Donnell. To my immediate right is Board Member Nicholas Gray. The rules of the board are first that we'll hear from the applicant, we'll hear from people who have questions of the applicant, and we'll hear from people who wish to speak in support or opposition to the amendment of the special permit. We're tape recording the proceedings so that if anyone speaks, tell us your name and address before you speak, and speak up nice and clear and loud so we'll have an accurate transcription if we have to rely on the tape recording to write a decision. So, Mr. Corcoran, welcome back to the Board of Appeals. We're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Ned Corcoran here on behalf of the Wollaston Golf Club, which is the applicant in this case, and I'm joined by a number of the members of particularly the building committee that has worked very hard to put together a set of plans to bring the club to its sort of a new era. The club that moved to the address at 999 Randolph Avenue in the 1970s as part of a special permit that was granted by this board. At that time, there have been several amendments. Most recently, October 13 of 2010, there was a hearing and a variance, special permit amendment granted for improvements to the clubhouse and other facilities. This is an additional set of improvements that are being proposed. Some fairly minor, I think, improvements to the clubhouse itself, increasing some banquet area, some outdoor space, but the raising and replacing of the cart barn, which is a single-story structure today, would become a 2.5-story structure, which would house men's locker room, teaching facilities for the Golf Pro, new Golf Pro shop, and whatnot. All is described in the plans. The description of the project, which would be pursued in phases, is really contained in the narrative explanation of the work that was prepared by Wayne Jakes of Acela Construction. It is one of the there's a written description I've contained in the materials that I've submitted. And I have two sort of aerial images from the town's website, I think, to help the board place the project in location that may work better than the aerial that I've submitted with the material. So, thank you. First aerial, sort of the club really as it sits within its entire neighborhood. It's surrounded on several sides by Residence A, essentially Residence A dwelling. This is the Indian Cliffs.
Okay.
Immediately to the north and the west, Woodside Drive, Meadow Lane, Hallen off of Randolph Avenue. It's all just to the west of Randolph Avenue. The main drive comes in, Randolph Avenue comes through the middle of the golf course and up to the area where all of really most of the facilities are located. Aerial sort of a closer up. It corresponds really to the scale almost of the aerial photograph that I provided, but the work as it would be here would be some improvements to the main clubhouse shown here, in which are identified on this aerial photograph as sort of these gray rectangles. So an area work in different locations in the clubhouse. And then the cart barn is the separate building that that's located to its left that would be removed and replaced. I've got architectural renderings that sort of depict the appearance of the work and the scope of the work. What I think is significant is that none of the work comes closer to the neighborhood, the residential abutters that essentially within, at the end of Long Meadow Road and the Indian Cliffs neighborhood, none of it's closer to any of the existing dwellings than the work that's already existing today. The distance between the closest point of the new work and a residential neighborhood boundary line is about 245 feet. The work to the clubhouse is on the other side of the pool and the pool house, which sit between the clubhouse and the corner of a single residential lot. And the new cart barn is 245 feet across an existing parking lot with some wooded area between that parking lot and the property at the end of Long Meadow Road. So I think it's significant that there's no further encroachment. This is work that has really been determined to be necessary to the club to sort of maintain itself and prepare itself for the next sort of 20 years of its existence. The pro shop is old, it's small, it needs to be expanded. The men's locker room, and the women's locker rooms need to be expanded. So some of the work that would take place within the area that would be subject to a relocation of the men's locker room would be an expanded women's locker room. There's some additional increases in seating capacity for some of the functions that take place, particularly for members. And whatnot. And then the new cart barn, the new building itself would house new facilities for the golf pro, for the men's locker room, and teaching facilities for the pro and his staff. If it's of significance, several weeks ago we conducted a neighbor meeting at the club. We invited all abutters in to a meeting. There were probably 8 or 10 abutters who came, who were non-members. We walked them through the improvements, gave them opportunities to ask questions to help understand specifically what the nature of the work was, what any impacts there might be relative to issues about increase in parking or other things, help them understand what was happening. I think people left with a good feeling. Can't say that people might not show up tonight otherwise, but we did give them the opportunity. I don't have letters of support from direct abutters. We advised them that tonight was the night. This was when the hearing was going to take place. They were all going to receive their invitations from the town as legally required to be here, and so they're aware of that. And so I think in this case, the board has said, and I think significant language, and I tried to repeat it in my written materials, that the purposes of the additional special permit for the improvements really represents what the board would find to be of a kind that are usual in connection with the high-grade country clubs in the greater Boston area. And that is a standard that this board has adopted in its prior cases here. I think the nature of these improvements would demonstrate that they are consistent with that standard, that they meet the quality of the club as the club seems itself to be. I would say, as someone who's involved in other matters in town, the club is extremely generous to the town, to the institutions within the town. I co-chair the annual golf tournament for the Milton Hospital. The club donates the use of the golf course that day on an annual basis. It's usually the third or fourth Monday of September. It's a significant event. There are 40-some foursomes all there for the benefit of the hospital. They donate the use of the golf course for Milton boosters, for other golf tournaments similarly, and so I know that, and they open their facilities to other events, either for small cocktail receptions or other things on behalf of other causes for the town, and they donate in kind foursomes to other golf tournaments, the use of the golf course for particular purposes, gifts from the pro shop for different items and prizes for different types of things, for raffles and things. And so I think that it's appropriate to recognize the stature of the club, the stature of its membership, the contributions that the club makes to the town, the type of a good neighbor that it has been with respect to the folks around it. I know that they're very careful to be conscious of the impacts that their operations have on their neighbors, particularly because the elements of the club that are capable of causing hardship are those elements which are closest to a neighborhood. You know, the most of the golf course, if you look at the, you know, so this aerial, the golf course, a lot of it is down along Harlan Street and backs up to wetland and other conservation area. That golf course has almost no impact on anybody. It's a quiet, passive recreational use. But tennis court, swimming pool, other facilities that are located here, proximate to neighbors, I know that the club is very careful in its relationship with those neighbors and the way it communicates what's going on with those neighbors to make sure that those neighbors understand what's happening. And I think they reached out to those neighbors, and in this case, it's consistent with the way the club operates. And so, given that, I would ask the board if it has any questions. I'm happy to respond more particularly to details of the plans, or the members that can speak in response to any other specific questions that you may have. And so I'll leave it at that and open it to the board. And thank you.
Ms. O'Donnell, please.
Just a quick question. So the access to the club is just that drive off of Randolph, not back into the neighborhood?
Correct. I think
Just
there's
like an emergency road or something like that?
there is a gated emergency access at the end of, I think it's Long Meadow Road. But that, and I know that members who live in the neighborhood
Yeah.
often walk and cut over the
yeah.
fence and all that
But
stuff.
that's not being
not-
used for?
no.
Okay,
It's not authorized to be used for general purposes.
okay.
Ed?
Yeah, that was my question.
Mr. Gray.
I hate to mention this, but would the increase of the size of the facilities, is there any concern, has there been any concern about the increase of traffic on in and out of it? Is your thought that the access in and out of the property is sufficient to handle the extra load, if you will, of having a larger banquet facility?
Yeah, I think, no question. Separate question what the town and the state do about Route 28.
Yeah, well, that's always, yeah.
That's a
that's a-
whole,
That's a bigger
we've
issue,
had that
obviously.
discussion.
And we're in the town will be having that discussion with the state for a while, I'm sure. I know that they're starting a corridor study and looking, but I don't, in the particular, you know, the periodic coming and going of people to and from, the 28 can handle it. The access road can certainly handle it.
Sure. And the parking is,
And the parking is more than
is
that.
plenty, but I thought I'd just ask.
But that's fairly consistent with the parking as you drive in
Yeah.
regularly. It would be a rare occasion when that parking lot is overloaded. And the club is a very active club, given the fact that it's got swimming, tennis, and other things. And my daughter was a lifeguard there for a year, and so, you know, it gets a lot of use day, evening,
Do
etc.
you remember there, Ned?
I am not a member there.
Okay. I don't have any questions. I read the materials closely and looked at all of the plans, and everything that Mr. Corcoran said has been consistent with everything that I've read. So let's see if there's anybody who has any questions of Mr. Corcoran. Yes, sir.
I have some questions, but is it time for questions? These I want to come first.
Well, I think not. I don't think that.
All right.
So if you have any questions, why don't you have to come up here and
Okay.
get by the microphone?
I want to strictly stay in the question chair and avoid the objection chair.
Okay, well, that's the question chair right there, sir.
My name is Richard Keenan, and I live at 43 Howland Ave.
Thank you.
I guess to start out with, the question is fundraising a business, because that's what it's all about. These guys are increasing the size of their venue, and good luck to them. The purpose of doing that is to run the business of fundraising. I counted one year, 30, what are those things when everyone plays golf at the same time? Tournaments. Not 3 tournaments, 30 of them. And, you know, good for them, they're having fun. But it's a business. Fundraising is a business, and it's a residential zoned area. And if these guys want to run a business in a residential zone area, they should ask you if they could do it. Not say, let us make our place bigger, and then that's all there is to it. It's let us make our place bigger so we can run a fundraising business on land that's residentially zoned. Everybody will tell you, yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, just basically that's the thing, like, the process that we're here, this is going to go to review, and people can make written comments and things of that nature, and then there's going to be a hearing, or is this the
No,
only hearing?
this is the hearing.
Oh, this is it? Oh, then I'd have to
D-Day
say
right
that.
here.
As stated, there's too many holes. Because in essence, what these guys want to do is run a business in a residential area. The business is fundraising.
Okay.
And so if you guys are going to vote on this, I'd have to move over to the objection chair. I thought that this was just a discussion before putting it up for review. Is there going to be a situation?
Well, it is a discussion, and
Is there gonna be a
you're
situation-
discussing your views.
Is there a situation that the prints and all the information is going to be held at the clerk's office for 30 days, and people can come and look and see it? Am I getting confused here?
No, the materials are going to be at the clerk's office for the next 20 years, but the
I don't think
point-
you understand what
I
I'm
know, I
saying.
understand perfectly your question, sir.
Maybe I'm not making myself clear, that's all.
No, that's not it. These materials have been present in the clerk's office for probably 2 or 3 weeks now.
No one told us that, and I'm
Well, if
about
you
it.
read the newspaper and you saw the ad,
Read the Globe and the Ledger.
well, then you're reading the wrong newspapers. Maybe you should check the local newspapers. If you look at the town website has...
No computer.
Well, all I can tell you, yes, sir.
So I'm
just, you know,
basically
just-
behind in the timeline here.
Yeah,
So
you-
I'm going to have to say that this is official objection.
Okay.
And the objection is that they're operating a business, which is called fundraising, and they're operating it in a residential area.
And they've been doing it for 30 years?
Not so
And
much as the
nobody's
recent
objected
past.
to it? Pardon me?
In the very beginning, they had a few tournaments, and they were in accordance with the list that you guys printed out a long, long time ago. Now, they're having upwards of 30 tournaments a year. I imagine they're more or less in the same
Do you
basic...
know how many of those 30 tournaments are charitable tournaments?
I'm guessing at all 30 of them.
All 30?
Yeah, see, charitable. Fundraising for charities is a business.
So fundraising for hospitals and fundraising for
Police and fundraising for sports, and, yeah, fundraising is a
It's all
business.
running
It's
the business.
2017.
Okay.
Fundraising is a business.
Okay. Let me follow through on my other thought, just so that the record is clear. These materials have been on file for 3 weeks.
Correct.
When the advertisements took place.
Well, I got a letter in the mail
And
from
so
you guys.
anyone...
Never said anything about being allowed to go and review the materials or where the materials were being held. Now, in the past, the letter would say, these materials are in the clerk's office, and any citizen can go to the clerk's office, request to see them, and actually look at them.
Mr. Keenan, where do you think the materials were? Do you think
It
they're at the...
never occurred
Do
to
you think
me.
they're at the Milton
My point of
Hospital, or-
view...
Do you think they're at the
No,
hospice
sir,
center
please.
down on...
I'd like to answer your question.
Sure, where do you think the materials were? So that you...
In his pocket.
You couldn't go and find them.
I thought they were in his possession, and that the plan was, the timeline was, that once we had this meeting, those materials would go from his suitcase to the clerk's office, today or tomorrow. And that 3-week period would start tomorrow. That's my understanding of how the system works. Now, I never said I was right.
No,
Maybe I'm behind on the timeline. But that's an answer to your question. Show me a formal notice that says that this material is available for review. I'd like to see
If you
one.
looked at the advertisement, or you called the
When you
building,
say advertisement, what are you talking about?
in the local newspaper,
I'm relying on the letter that was sent to my home from you.
the advertisement is in the newspaper that's the record for the town. And so if you don't want to look at that, it's hard to blame somebody because
Well, nobody's
you haven't
blaming
educated.
anybody for anything. I might
Let
be
me
off
ask you
on the
this.
timeline.
You are off on the timeline. I don't want to get into a battle with you, but you certainly could have called the building inspector and asked him, what do I do under these circumstances? Where do I go? Where can I find the materials? Mr. Corcoran was,
The last time this happened, there was a meeting in front of you guys that lasted a short period of time. Then that was followed by a review period. The review period followed the initial meeting with you guys.
did you attend the 8 to 10 abutters meetings that Mr. Corcoran had?
You had 8 or 10 abutters
8 or
meetings?
10 abutters were there.
We had...
Did you attend that meeting?
At the club.
Yeah.
Several weeks ago, you were there.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, was that helpful to you?
Basically, he said that they were going to be here to have the initial hearing. Initial hearing, that's it. Not the final hearing, the initial hearing. And he told everybody who was present there that day.
Did you look at the plans?
No, I haven't had a chance to see them. I'm waiting with bated breath for they to be available.
Didn't Mr. Corcoran display the plans to you?
No,
He didn't.
he had a television set and a button that he pushed every once in a while.
And
I haven't seen a
What
set
images
sheet.
appeared on the television set?
Pardon me?
Did images appear on the television set?
Yeah, they
What
were-
did you see?
They were called, let me think, there's a word for it. Elevation images. That was it. The elevation drawings.
Okay, so you didn't see any of these beautiful drawings here? And
Listen, my idea of a set of prints is a book that's about 3 feet by 4 feet. It's got blue ink on it. It's signed by engineer and architect, the town. It says on it, construction documents, and you need a table as big as this to fold it open and read it. That's what prints are.
Okay, and that's what you want to see?
Yeah, and I want 3 weeks to review them.
Well, then you should rewrite the general laws of Mr. Keenan, because that's not what the general laws provide, that's not what the advertisement provides, that's not what the Board of Appeal rules provide. Let me say this to you. Did you have any specific questions that you want Mr. Corcoran or some of the club members?
One of the
to-
things that happened at that meeting, I asked him point blank if he was going to increase the size of the venue, and he told me no. And I later found out that they're adding 120 seats. So that's 500 people leaving there at once. And I think that it's safe to say, everybody knows we got trouble on Randolph Ave. There are 4 dead people since January.
Right, but how many of those dead people were people going to and from the
There were
club?
people who were driving on the roadway.
Right.
1 minute they were driving a car, and the next minute they weren't.
Do you agree with me that most of the people who use Randolph Avenue in the morning and in the evening commuting times are driving through Milton, and they're not Milton residents?
Yeah, I know what commuter traffic is.
They're cutting through. So I don't know of any members of the club who have been involved in tragic accidents out there.
Well, that's not it. Actually, I do. One time, the manager, she had some trouble. That was in the early 80s.
That's
She was leaving the premises and got nailed.
That's unfortunate. It is a dangerous place, but
But to get back to whether or not these people are operating a business in residential A, and fundraising is a business.
well, according to your definition,
According
that's
to a
true.
minimum standard of conduct in a society today, fundraising is a business. Get a Yellow Pages and look up under F, fundraisers.
There are people who do fundraising for a business, but there are some businesses that do fundraising for charities.
Right,
like
and
the
that
Milton
is a
Hospital
business.
And the,
Fundraising is a business.
well, we can have this debate all night.
I'm beyond disappointed that the issue here was, his impression was that, A, this was a preliminary meeting, that nothing would be decided here. This is his exact words. Nothing would be decided here tonight, that you would start the process, that you would accept the application, and that the application and the prints, and I'm talking about the blueprints for the actual building itself, the detailed prints that include every single thing and the spec book would be available after this meeting for review. That's what that guy told me, and that's what I expect to see. And if anything else happens, well, why did they do it that way? And if they want to run a fundraising business, let them ask you permission to do it. Why hide behind, let's make the building bigger for no apparent reason?
Have you completed your comments, sir?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming tonight and presenting your views. Is there anybody else who would like to? Yes, Mr. Lovely. Welcome to the Board of Appeals, sir. Good evening. Good to see you again.
My name is Barn Lovely. I live at 76 Old Farm Road, which is in the Indian Springs area of Milton. I've had the pleasure of being a member of the club, by way of full disclosure, since about 1982. A couple of things. I want to talk, first of all, as you know, I've been involved in town activities for 30 years, 35 years.
Yeah, that.
I've had the pleasure of being on the school committee. I've worked on the committee to build the new schools. And the first thing I want to point out is that the one thing that has attracted me to the club, first of all, the club is a social club. The tournaments which we run are of a fundraising nature. They benefit innumerable charities. We provide them with a venue for doing so. We provide them at a rate or a cost which is reasonable. The number of people who attend these events represent those who would be playing and are on committees working to support the activity. And it provides an opportunity for those people who are looking for a place to bring people for both social and fundraising purposes, the opportunity to benefit other charitable purposes. I think the club has been, since inception, a good corporate citizen. As Ned Corcoran has said, and Ned is fully aware. We would have let Ned in if he had applied at an appropriate time, but, it's just,
Well, I thought it was his
unfortunate. He
golf
belongs to
game
one of
that was
those Yankee
causing
clubs in
problems. Just
other areas.
not up to par in his handicap. Maybe if you improve your handicap, Ned, you'll get a second shot. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Lovely.
But no interruption at all. The point is that, first of all, from my perspective, we're good corporate citizens. Yes, we run fundraisers. We afford an opportunity for them to be run successfully through our club. The club is generous to the community. I've been involved in the Milton High Boosters. I've been involved in just about everything. And every time I go to the club to look for some support, it's willingly extended and graciously given and generously provided. Secondly, there's a great deal of talk about the potential of whatever this may be, increased traffic. We have a relatively stable membership. It's been about the same for the last 30 years. We put a limit on the number of charter-sustaining members who can play golf. We have a limited number of social members. And the people who come in and out of the club on a daily basis, fortunately, our experience has been we have a good track record. We're not a cause of difficulty with the Milton Police. There are not any number of unnecessary calls from the Milton Fire Department to our facility. We monitor carefully the alcohol that's served on the premises. We have very strict rules to which our staff are required to abide. So I think we run a club that is a good social citizen and a good citizen of Milton. And we're asking for an opportunity to make the club more accessible and attractive to those who might want to use it for a variety of reasons. One of the things we're doing, and which we have not been able to do in the past, is we are recognizing that the facilities for our women are not satisfactory. And we're designing, in the context of this development, a very significantly expanded facility for the accommodation of our women members, both by way of locker room and fitness facilities, practice facilities, and training facilities. So we think that's a very positive aspect of our development. And it also is going to attract more young people in and around the community of Milton to have an opportunity to socialize and come together for a variety of social and business purposes. So I come only here to support this, to say firsthand that our club is a good corporate citizen, that we respectfully ask you to support this petition, and that we believe that we will continue to provide to Milton a place of which they can be proud and we can be proud. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Lovely, we appreciate it. Did you have a question, Mr. Lovely? No. Okay. Let me ask, is there anybody present who has questions of Mr. Corcoran regarding this application? Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in support of the application? Yes, sir. Yeah, you'll have to come up here, sir, because we're televising this, and the... I think it is. Do you want to take a minute, and we'll see if somebody else is... You can step outside and tell your wife you'll call her right back. Is there anybody else who wants to fill in for a minute and say anything? Okay, that's... We'll give this gentleman...
I could ask a question.
Sure.
Want to ask a question?
Do you have a question?
How many members are there in the club?
340 chairs.
And 120 social?
Yes, sir, why don't you sit down there? That microphone is for the purposes of television. It doesn't project your voice, so
That's all right. So,
keep your voice up.
yeah, my name is Anthony Nader. I'm a direct abutter.
Where do you live, Mr. Nader?
50 Countryside Lane, Milton.
Good. Welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Delighted to hear from you.
Moved into the neighborhood in year 2000, and my family and my kids have been a member of the club for almost 18 years. And I can say that it's been a pleasure to have my family, my kids grow up at the club. And I just wanted to show my support by coming in here tonight, saying that it's been 17, 18 years of just wonderful people that we've been associated with, family and friends, as a result of Wallaston and the management team that's been there. So, but anyway, that's what I'm here for.
Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you coming in tonight. Is there anybody else who either has questions or wishes to be heard in support of the application? If not, let's see, other than Mr. Keenan, is there anyone other than Mr. Keenan who wishes to speak in opposition to this application to amend the special permit? And there's no such person present. Mr. Keenan, have you said your piece, or do you have anything else you want to add?
Really, sir? Should I come forward?
Yeah, you probably should, because the TV producers will get
What
mad at it.
surprises me is being told at the golf club that this was a preliminary meeting, that once this meeting was held, it was to put in the application and to get to the point where the prints would be delivered for review. That's what he told me. Now, is that true or not, Ed?
Now, Mr. Corcoran says that's not true.
It's not true. I'll tell you exactly what I said, because I explained the whole process.
Oh, wait a minute, you're missing the point. Is it true right now that you're putting those prints available for review? That's the question.
No, I submitted those prints to the board a month ago when I filed the application for the permit. I know that the notice that went out from the clerk's office contained a copy of the advertisement, and the advertisement specifically
I never got that
says
notice.
that the property lies, that the,
That notice wasn't mailed to the abutters.
all is there and set forth.
Was it required that that notice be nailed to the abutters?
I received a copy.
The abutters who were entitled to notice received it. Mr. Corcoran, no, just hold on, Mr. Keenan.
43 Helen Ave is in a butter. I live there. I never got that in the mail.
Maybe you didn't look in your mailbox. I don't
Well,
know.
maybe I did.
All I'm saying to you, sir, I'm not going to fight with you on this, is that was published in the newspaper. He's reading the newspaper advertisement, and the newspaper advertisement says that the application and plans are on file with the board and open to public inspection. And if you chose not to look at the advertisement...
Well, hold on. What newspaper did he use?
It's probably the Patriot Ledger. Strike it. No, the Milton Times.
Okay, now, has the Milton Times, because there's an issue about circulation of the newspaper. and that to be recognized as a newspaper for public notices.
Mr. Keenan, let me be...
I'm not finished,
Let me be
please.
candid. I'm not, you may not be finished, but we're not going to talk about the circulation of the Milton Times.
Well, I think it's significant, because if the circulation
You may, but you don't
doesn't
read it,
meet
so
a
it doesn't
threshold,
make any
then
difference.
advertising in the Milton Times isn't
Read the
allowed.
Milton Times, you don't read the Milton Times.
That's correct.
You didn't read the Milton Times here. You never saw the advertisement, you didn't look at the...
Why wasn't it in a
you didn't look
newspaper
at the
that had a
website?
circulation figure that would be, that would include everybody that lives in town?
Everybody in the town of Milton.
Yeah.
That's the Milton Times.
Well, I
people-
hate to burst your bubble here, but it's not. Nobody reads the Milton Times.
Well, you don't read it, that's for sure, and you don't look at the website, and you don't talk to the
Is it
building
against the
inspector.
law to not own a computer?
No, but if you're misinformed, we're not the problem.
Well, if the
You're problem
misinformation
because you
comes
didn't read it.
from the guy whose job it is to tell us the truth, do you see that that's a problem,
Mr. Keenan-
Houston?
Mr. Keenan, you better be careful what you're saying here. If you're accusing people of lying,
That's exactly what I'm doing.
Then
Is there any
fine.
doubt in anybody's mind what I'm saying here?
I think there's doubt in everyone's mind, to be frank about it.
Oh, I'm not making myself clear?
You're making yourself ill-informed. That's what you're making yourself. I think you should go down and sit in that chair. You're making outrageous statements. If you don't read the ads, you don't go to the building inspector's office.
It's my understanding
don't
the
come
ads
to look
have
at
to
the
be in a
records.
newspaper that has a minimum circulation figure.
Well, tell me, what's the proof
I don't
of that?
know the
What's
exact number
authority?
today.
You don't know the proof. You don't know
No,
the
no, no, the
authority.
exact number of the circulation figures of the
Where does
Milton
this come
Times.
from? Where's the authority that has to have a
Well,
certain...
Jimmy Mullen told me that years ago.
Mullen, years ago,
Yeah.
20 years ago.
Has
or
things
30 years
changed?
ago. Jimmy Mullen isn't clerk anymore.
I'm
The general
aware
laws
of it.
have changed. The only one who may not have changed is you, most respectfully, because you don't look at computers, you don't come to the town, you don't read newspapers.
I'm
and
here
then you
now.
Then you claim you're being misinformed.
Well, yeah.
You're misinformed because you don't look to find out the source of the information. That's the problem here.
I asked the source of the information.
Okay, this isn't productive. If you were...
You're
gonna-
right. And so that's one reason to vote them no.
Well, that's fine.
There's controversy here.
Controversy.
Vote no. They want to run a business in residential property, and make no mistake about it, fundraising is a business.
You've said that 25 times now.
Well, I'll say it 26. Fundraising's a
Okay,
business,
that's
and
it.
that's
No,
what they
please.
want to do.
Thank you.
Run a business in a residential area.
For coming tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. With all of that, is anybody else who wants to be heard this evening? Okay, so there's nobody who wishes to be heard. Do any of the board members have any questions of either Mr. Corcoran?
Just one more question.
Sure, go ahead.
And it's sort of, I hate to ask this question, but when the club runs a charity event, they charge a fee they might charge a fee. Does the club make a profit on that?
I'm assuming it makes...
Generally, I mean, it covers its
It certainly
expenses.
covers costs, and it probably makes some profit.
little bit,
It doesn't in
And-
all of the cases, because in some cases, they donate the use of the land.
Thank you. That's all.
Kathleen, do you have any questions?
No,
Okay.
I'm a member of yacht clubs, not,
Okay, so I don't have any questions, and so
so I wouldn't know what to ask.
if nobody has anything else to add, we're going to close the evidence portion of this hearing and consider the application in open session and vote on it here and now. So, Ms. O'Donnell, do you want to be heard first?
I looked at the plans. I've never actually been to the Wollaston Golf Course, but it's because I participate in other sports. But I am certainly familiar with the issues around clubs and making sure that your facilities address the needs of your female and male members. And I also understand that the clubhouse was originally built in like the 1970s or something. So there's clearly going to have to be some upgrades to make sure that you're staying at the same level as other organizations, similar situated golf courses. And so I don't have any objections to the modification of the special permit.
Okay. Mr. Gray?
I would just note that the special permit's been, that this club was established. I mean, it's probably been said, but I just wanted to get it out there. the original special permit that this club is operating under was in 1973. Is that correct?
Yes.
I mean, that's what I'm reading in your thing. So I'm trying to do the math in my head, but I'm a lawyer, not a math guy. So, but it's been going for a long time. Since the 70s, it's been modified over the years. Since the club was constructed, probably it's had similar structures on them, a clubhouse. The type of things that we're modifying in this design are consistent, basically, with the operation of the club as it's been over the years. Is that fair to say? We're not, I mean, we're expanding the size of them, we're making them more up to date, but it's not out of place for a club of this size and scope in this area. It's is that correct, fair to say?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. And that the primary purpose of this institution is it's a social club. It's operating as a nonprofit, right? I mean, under the terms of the special permit. So it seems to me that the plans that have been submitted are consistent with what has been occurring at the facility, at the club for many years. That it would cause them to be updated and brought up to current standards in a way that's consistent with other clubs, consistent with the use that they've had historically. I don't have any I don't really find any particular objection to it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right, that it sort of upgrades of what's already there. They're not significantly increasing, it seems to me.
More golf carts, maybe, but or a better place for the golf carts, but
Yeah.
club barn. No, it's cart barn, sorry.
You don't play golf?
I don't play golf.
Okay, admit it.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Neither do I.
Have you finished?
I'm finished. Thank you very much.
My view of this application is that Mr. Corcoran has presented a wonderful application. We've looked at these plans. I've looked at them for the last 3 weeks, reviewing them and studying them. And I read the architect's submittal, which is very detailed, but is also very helpful. So I believe this is a very well done upgrade to the club facilities. The club has been there for 30 years. I don't think we've ever had one complaint in 30 years. We're not the police department, we're not the fire department, and we're not the planning board, but we have had no complaints whatsoever about the operation of this club. It has a stellar reputation. It's an asset to the town of Milton, and it's charitable endeavors, a nonprofit. They're not running a business. This is a nonprofit club, and I've had the occasion once or twice over that 30-year period to attend some of these golf tournaments, and I agree with Mr. Lovely that they're not only tournaments for the rich and famous, they're tournaments for people who really need the money and are benefited by the opportunity to have some revenue from their tournaments. The club, in my view, is exceptionally well run, and these are improvements which are consistent with the betterment of the club and its charitable endeavors. And likewise, it does not impose any additional burden, substantial or otherwise, on the neighborhood. The improvements are set up so that they're furthest away from the Milton neighborhoods. And as Mr. Corcoran, I believe, noted, or it may have been Mr. Lovely, those portions of the club that are active, such as the pool and the tennis courts, receive special attention by the club to make sure they're solicitous of neighbors, and that the neighbors, I understand, are sometimes asked to enjoy some of these facilities. So I think this application has merit, and it has substantial merit, and I intend to to vote in support of this application. It certainly imposes no derogatory effect whatsoever upon the neighborhood, and the improvement of the facilities, not only for the members, but for women. That's a topic of great interest these days. That's important, but it is important. But more importantly, the pro shop and the dining facility to be improved is significant, not only for club members, but people who are attending these various tournaments and other functions that are held at the club, municipal functions that are held at the club, and other weddings and other types of meetings. So I believe this is in the best interests of the club. It's in the best interest of the town of Milton. It's in the best interest of the neighbors to have a vibrant, modern club and not a club that's deteriorating so that you can't get members. So to me, I intend to vote in favor of this application, and I do that with enthusiasm. So all those in favor of granting the amendment to the special permit as requested, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ned, let me just ask you this in terms of, I assume you're trying to do this as quickly as you can, or is
I
this?
think they would like to begin demolition of the existing cart barn and then get going from there.
Okay. Well, as you probably know, because you practice here a lot, sometimes Mr. Prondak allows preliminary procedures to be taken, may include demolition. We leave that up to him, but we'll do our best to crank out this decision with some dispatch so that you won't be adversely affected. Thank you all for coming tonight. We appreciate your coming. And
Thank you.
so thank you very much. And that includes you, Mr. Keenan. Thank you for coming, sir.
Need a date, just a signature?
Even if it's a non-profit business.
I'm sorry. Oh, it's up there.